And to me, when I look at your application, that's a big, big red flag. Application Renovation Season 4, Episode 2. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Dr. Red?
I am fantastic. I love application renovation recordings because I hope in my heart of hearts that what I'm going to share with you will make all of the difference in your next application cycle if you need it, and will be the difference between not acceptance and acceptance, if that's a word. But I'm excited to help you kind of understand and see through, at least my eyes, what's going on with your application. Before we jump into that, though, how many application cycles have you been in? How many interviews have you been on? What's the numbers there?
So currently with this cycle, I have applied and it is now my third. Okay. And interview-wise, I only had 2, and those were from the past cycle last year.
Interesting. So this current cycle, no interviews so far.
It's a whopping 0, yes. So
why do you think that is?
I would say it is a combination of, one, applying late, relatively late for this cycle. Also, perhaps maybe it's a bit too similar to my last application, to just go back to back like that. And I have currently done some things that have definitely improved it, but maybe not at the time that I submitted. So maybe it's a bit too similar there.
Got it. All right. So 3 application cycles. This is getting pretty expensive for you at this point.
Yeah, indeed.
Why not give up? Why not go do something else?
Well, there's a passion there for medicine. That's definitely something that has been developed over time with all of these cycles, and obviously the many years that I've spent pursuing this. There's definitely a deep understanding of what medicine is, at least for me. And so, I look at other careers. Perhaps I look at this career, and I would be most happy doing this. So the pursuit continues.
Let's rock and roll and take a look at your application. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. So first thing I love pointing out, you mentioned you applied late. I don't think you did. June 24th is a little bit later. It's about a month after the application opened up. This was your 3rd application cycle, so you knew everything that needed to be done. Why do you think it took you so long to submit this time?
So I was actually deep in Mcat studies around this time.
Yes.
Yep. And so it was the secondaries being complete at schools, that type of thing, like having my secondaries in. That's what I mean by late, because that was back in open in September at that point.
Okay.
Whenever I would be complete. So
got it. Not horrible. Maybe not ideal, but definitely not a deal breaker. And it's one of the biggest issues that I talk about with a later MCAT is not necessarily how the later MCAT is going to delay your application at all. It's that the prep for that later MCAT gets in the way of everything else. And so it kind of has this domino effect of a later submission for your primary, potentially later submissions of secondaries, etc. And so you can see it was processed on August 3rd, which isn't that bad. That's when medical schools are kind of ramping up to take a look at the new application cycle anyway. So not horrible, but it is what it is. So we kind of scroll through. All the demographic information is redacted out. No big red flags, which is great. I always love pointing out the SES disadvantaged, which is an automatic kind of calculation from AMCAS based on parents' education level, etc. Is marked no. No military history. When we get to grades, The Ohio State University is probably the biggest reason why you didn't get into medical school ever, because you went to a kind of a mediocre undergraduate university. I always got to poke fun at Ohio State. Sorry, The Ohio State. Got to say it correctly.
Right.
We got some not so great grades going on. What?
No, this part's harder to look at.
Yeah, what was going on here with you?
So I wanted to go into medicine. But at that time, I guess I didn't really understand what that meant and what that took to make that dream come true. And
Okay.
so it's just a lack of maturity and drive, passion, etc.
Yeah.
And so
Were you
those
living the college
numbers
life?
and letters. You could say that, yeah.
Okay, I will say that. Okay, so living the college life a little bit. Were you a good undergrad student, or not undergrad, a good high school student?
High school, yeah, I wouldn't say I was stellar.
Okay.
But that's, yeah.
Okay. All right. So lots of C's, lots of D's, lots of B's. We'll get to the calculation here in a minute. But we can see at some point you have grad level classes. You kind of went to a kind of a peer related school, kind of in terms of difficulty. Texas A&M. Again, it's no University of Florida, but
Right.
we made a transition here in your life of, okay, I'm ready to start getting good grades, starting in 2017. You transferred, it looks. Oh no, that was kind of a summer class that you took at A&M. So
Yes.
it looks like maybe you move back home or back wherever, and you go potentially somewhere more local, maybe more support, more friends, whatever that situation is for you. But there's a big change in your academic record. Why all of a sudden did that flip there?
So, of course, at that point, I am finished with college.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's kind of a fork in the road. It's either, well, I'm not getting into med school at this point, if with where I'm at right now. So I can either try and make that happen, or I can, give up and do something else. And so I also, at that point, I had gotten a scribe job. That was the summer after I graduated. And so obviously that would put me in with a lot of experience with directly with a physician, but also as a part of the healthcare team. And so it was part of the reason why I continued to pursue medicine, because you get some personal experience, and I think yes, I do want to do this. And so, yeah, we're looking at a multiple year journey ahead, but let's do it. So
got it. All right. So big switch, other than this public health class, which is a bummer, but big switch in your GPA and performance, which is amazing. 34 credits of science credits in your graduate schooling, 398 GPA. Fantastic, right? We look at your cumulative undergrad at 249, big ouch. 398 science GPA, 34 credits. Awesome. All right, so you have 76 total hours of your graduate schooling at a 386. Fantastic. How much do you think your graduate GPA is just keeping you from being looked at by schools? Your undergraduate GPA.
Undergraduate. Yeah. So I'd say I'd say that's probably the biggest factor. You ask anyone and they take a look at this app, they're probably going to immediately point that out as well. Mm-hmm. There's always that magic number of 3.0 to where it's just kind of an automatic you're under that. I don't like that.
Which, to be clear, is a very mythical, just kind of rule of thumb that everyone throws around. And some schools may use it, but it's nothing kind of written in stone.
Right. And I've reached out to any school that I've applied to about, having an actual person looking at my application before it gets thrown out because it's below 3.0. But, there's always going to be that bias there or something. So,
and what have the schools said? How receptive have they been to that conversation?
So they always say we're all about holistic review. So the magic words right there. Yeah. And so, from what they tell me, then they're at least going to make an assessment before just saying trash. Yeah. Below 3.0. So.
Yeah. It's impossible. Have you thought about working on your undergraduate GPA? Have you done the math? How many credits would it take to get to that 3.0 mark in a post-bac?
I did the math. I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay. It's quite a bit. Yeah. In the years, but yeah. So I did the S&P, and it's always the two options is post-bac S&P.
Yeah.
And so.
And why did you choose the S&P route?
it's people say it's like high risk, high reward. It's like this alternative method to get into medical school for people in my position. Obviously, it's a 1 year program versus many for a post-bac or something of that nature. And so all those things kind of appealed to me. And I definitely felt like I want to be thrown into the very difficult, high-level medical courses to prove that I am capable of doing this. And so
and was there any linkage involved, any sort of guarantees of interviews or anything if you performed well?
So with that S&P I did, the Georgetown one, there's no official linkage. The director of the program before, orientation or whatever, they say that I think they interview the top 50% of the class, which is like a good chunk of the class, of course. And that GPA is usually around a 3.4-ish.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But that's it. There's nothing else.
Okay.
And that's not even like a guaranteed thing. That she just said that that's the trend.
Yeah.
Basically.
And did you get an interview with them?
I did. That was one of my two.
That was last year. Okay.
Yes.
But not this year.
Nope.
Was this the G squared program?
This is the regular old S&P.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So grades, obviously a potential red flag there for some schools that don't care about graduate GPA, that don't think graduate GPA is a good enough indicator. Whatever that specific admissions office is going to look at, you have no control of that. You did what you could control and you crushed it GPA-wise. So great job there.
Thank you.
Your MCAT left no doubts. Fourth time's a charm.
Right.
Talk about this MCAT progression, because you go from a 496, which basically just tells me you didn't know what you were doing and you just were like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go take the MCAT now, and you took it with no preparation.
Accurate. That is very accurate.
I've been doing this for a little while. I know what students do. You go and take it. You're like, I'll just dip my toes in the water. You come back at 513, crush it, great job. You had to take it again because the score's expiring. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to take it again, or I'm going to show that I can do even better just to try to help overcome my GPA. And
that was more my thought process.
You scored lower.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
That hurts. So there's not really like excuses here for it. But the one thing I will say is that this was the height of COVID, and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back.
Yep.
And I was ready to take it about 3 months before I ended up actually taking it.
Got it.
And so it was kind of hard to just maintain. I exhausted all my resources and
got it. Yeah. So this was 3 months into the pandemic, and people were still like, I don't know what's going on. So got it.
Exactly. I got lucky with even having a test.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you did. So you take it again in August of this year, of 2021, your application cycle year, and you crushed it. 521. Can't get much better than that, with a perfect score in Chem Phys and near perfect scores in Biochem and Psych-So. So amazing job there. What do you think it was that allowed you to kind of, like Neo finally seeing the Matrix? How did you finally see the MCAT?
So definitely a big part is the S&P, and not necessarily the classes I took, and the material I learned was helpful. Although I do remember that getting me a question just because of it was like medically related. And immediately I was like, okay, this is the answer. But it was the study habits that I picked up, and the work ethic, discipline, etc. So studying wise for this MCAT was definitely serious stuff, and I had no problem doing that because that's kind of how I did the S&P. And so it was just a continuation of that. And so
got it.
It got me that score.
Awesome. All right. So at this point, you've basically done all you can do from an academic ability standpoint of like, I can obviously take a darn test. I can do well in classes. Yeah, my undergraduate GPA is not good at all, but I hope you overlook that. And that is unfortunately out of your control, which is one of the most frustrating parts of this process. But you've done the work. And so now we hope that somebody's going to take a look at the rest of your application and go, all right, show me what else you got. So let's look at the rest. So we look at soup kitchen volunteering. First one here. Community service that ended, a lot of your experiences ended kind of July, August of 2021. Why did those end then and not kind of estimate out until when you were going to start medical school?
So this is whenever I moved to Houston-ish to start another job. So
got it.
Moving away from the city. So
got it. Okay. So moving and obviously can't do something from 3 hours away. Got it.
Mhm.
All right. And so from a activity description standpoint, nothing big to say. Not huge mistakes, nothing amazing about it, but decent, right? So just little stories here that you have. You didn't try to sell too much. You didn't try to just list duties. You tried to do a little storytelling, which is good. So we have this first soup kitchen volunteering, food bank volunteering are both on top here. We go to this hospital infection prevention internship, which looks like it was part of your school. I always question whether or not like school stuff should be in the experience description, because we kind of call the experience description the extracurricular activities. But I think it's okay to throw in there. It kind of shows some more experience, some more exposure that you've had. Again, nothing kind of blow me out of the water, amazing or terrible about the activity description, which is okay. That's okay. And so I don't have a lot of comments activity description wise. You have your physician shadowing here. You shadowed a hand surgeon from March to May 2019, and then from June to July 2019. About 34 hours, not a ton of hours, but decent. And so you have that in there. Did you do any e-shadowing, virtual shadowing kind of stuff, or no?
No.
Okay.
So all my shadowing was in person.
Okay. You have this trip to Peru, MedLife Service Learning trip that you did back in March of 2019 for 24 hours. And you talked about running this mobile health clinic and interacting with this girl. And just, again, the impact and storytelling is good. Not bad. My biggest concern looking at all of your activities is what? What is my biggest concern? And we haven't looked at them all for everyone else watching.
Okay. So you mean in general, overall, for just the whole work and activities section?
Yeah.
Is it the kind of low commitment, kind of bouncing around?
No, not bouncing around, because moving does that to an application. It makes it look like you're bouncing around.
Okay, gotcha.
My biggest, and it's interesting you use that word commitment, and I wonder if there's some like subconscious thing that is pulling that out. If we look at your clinical experience and shadowing experience, it's all old.
Okay, gotcha.
And so the question of commitment comes up because of that. How committed are you to this? Because you're not doing anything activity-wise, or at least that you wrote about here, that shows that you are committed to this, that you are interested in this, that you want to spend your time doing this. So if we look at medical and clinical experience, you have shadowing that was July 2020, not terrible. You have this mission trip, March of 2019, so pretty old. You have server jobs, so not medical, clinical. You have this Baylor Scott and White Helping Hands program, again from 2019, so pretty old. Not a ton of hours, about 60 hours. You have your scribe job here, 17-18, so old. You have some more physician shadowing from 2015, 16, 19. And then you have this Wexner Medical Center, 2015. And so I was hoping, as I was scrolling through looking at your application, just the way that the PDF is sorted, just kind of behind the scenes stuff, how the PDF is sorted when you print it, it's by start date of activity. And so I was hoping I was going to find a really old start date that had a current end date that was clinical experience and go, okay, phew, like we're exploring, we're getting experience, we're proving we want to be around patients and doctors. But that's not what's happening. And to me, when I look at your application, that's a big, big red flag.
Gotcha. Okay.
Why am I going to waste, and I use that in a hyperbolic way, waste an application on you when you haven't shown your interest in medicine from a time spent perspective, being around doctors, being around patients for a couple years?
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so big question mark that goes to that commitment word that you used, which I thought was very interesting. That was a good word.
Right.
So I just wanted to browse through. Again, your activities were not terrible. You had a good story here for Luigi's Restaurant, a good story of that interaction. A couple of the stories were a little bit more about this other person and not about you. So your Baylor Scott and White Helping Hands program was more about the nurse than about you. And so it was kind of the wrong focus of the writing. Okay. Same thing with the public health volunteering. It was more about this person, Temi, and not about you. So just a very common mistake of how students write about things is they write about this other person when it should be kind of your view and your lens.
Gotcha.
You worked as a scribe again 2017, 2018, which is great. Be careful of jargon. You have slack wrist here.
Okay.
I don't remember. Like, I wanted to be an orthopod at one point. I don't remember what slack wrist is, so I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
So just be careful of jargon. Nice little story here for Children's Hospital volunteer. So again, from an activity description standpoint, not bad, right?
Okay.
Not the best I've seen. Definitely not the worst I've seen. Good enough. Good enough to go, yeah, I see who you are. I get to see these cute little stories that you have here. Good job. My biggest concern is the lack of clinical experience. And then one thing that students often do here, your Wexner Medical Center volunteer experience, you marked it as medical clinical. But the description, you say, I mostly called in patients from the waiting area and delivered lunch and snacks to the patients in their room. Probably not the best description of what clinical experience is, so just be careful for everyone. Writing about something that's like, oh, this is clinical experience. I spent most of my time stocking shelves, right? Probably not clinical. Okay?
Okay.
So there's better things to focus on there. Hobbies. I love hobbies. I think you tried to go a little bit too wide and go, oh, I love this hobby and this hobby and this hobby and this hobby without going too in depth and letting me see you in these hobbies, right? Tell me about, you have here for fishing, hiking, camping. My favorite family memories are from fishing trips. Like, tell me one of those memories. Why is it so memorable for you? Help me see you with your family in these moments. So just not enough depth there to dive into in the hobbies. So I get to the end of your activity descriptions, and I would probably, if it were me as an admissions committee member, I'd probably just put your application to the side and say this person hasn't done enough recently, and I'm just not sure they're committed to this, and I'm going to move on. Crushed your SMP, crushed your MCAT score. I don't need smart people in medical school. I need people who want to be physicians based on their actions of being around patients, being around doctors. And I know there's lots of pushback from either disadvantaged applicants or other people who are like, you have done enough. It's just older, right? Why isn't that enough? And unfortunately, the answer is it's just not. Because people change their mind, and you may just still be applying because your mom or dad wants you to still apply, but you're really not committed to it. But there's lots of questions around that. Okay.
Okay.
So from
Makes sense.
going from 0, right now, at least that's on your application, to 100 once you're in medical school, it's like, well, do you want to be at 100? Or are you going to second guess this 2 weeks into medical school on your first kind of preceptor rotation? Okay.
Right.
All right. So that is activity description. We get to the personal statement. A personal statement is really interesting. So you start off here. In the years I've spent pursuing medicine, one truth is evident to me. I am entering one of the most challenging fields in existence. What the heck's the point of that sentence?
Well, I'm not sure. I suppose going for some type of catch with the intro, but yeah, I don't know if there was much of a point behind that. So
Yeah.
to state the obvious.
State the obvious. And I love having students take out all of these state the obvious sentences in a personal statement. Because if it's obvious, you shouldn't need to say it. And it's just wasting space. Right? And so it goes further, right? I try to be a psychologist here on this show and go, okay, why are you putting this? What is your inner subconscious trying to tell me? So I'm like, okay, it's challenging. Got it. Are you scared of it? Are you worried about it? Like, what's going on? And then you go, medicine is challenging because of the sacrifices a physician must make. Oh, now we're back to that word that you used, commitment. Are you committed to this? Knowing that it's hard because you have to make sacrifices. Your little inner person is like, hey, he's listening to me.
Right.
That's what I get from reading this. I'm like, you have some internal conflict on whether or not this is what you want to do. From your activities or lack of activities, and from 2 sentences in your personal statement.
Gotcha. So
And
right off the bat, my intros.
Yeah.
Calling into question.
your intro and your activities, lack of activities. I may be completely off base, but that's one opinion that could be drawn from this.
Okay.
And that scares me.
I totally see where you're coming from. So yeah.
Okay. Is there any truth to it?
I wouldn't say so, no.
Good.
But with the way that I've conveyed this now, then yeah, it certainly could be taken like that. So
yeah, it could. Okay. So medicine is challenging because of the sacrifices a physician must make. Am I willing to make those sacrifices? I don't know, but I'm going to ponder about it here in my personal statement. Okay. It's challenging because of the responsibilities a physician has. Do I want those responsibilities? Am I up for those responsibilities? Am I going to like going to work with lots of responsibilities? Or do I want some kind of cush slack off job? I don't know. I'm pondering that in my personal statement. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
I embrace it with open arms as it is what I want to do with my life more than anything else. Okay. Could have fooled me. But I'm glad you're trying to tell me. Okay. So the goal of the personal statement is to show me why you want to be a physician, show me the journey that you've been on, not just kind of loud and proud at the very top of the mountain. Go, I want to be a physician. I embrace it with open arms. Okay, you're trying to like shortcut the whole reason of the personal statement.
Right.
You just stop after that first paragraph. Be like, okay, see, I told you I want to be a doctor.
Yep.
You should accept me. All right. So the desire is something that began with my mother's inspiration when I was young. So nice little transition there to, okay, what's next in this journey? All right. So we have a little bit of a story of your mom, 11 years old, China, sent from a rural farm because of Cultural Revolution. And then you hear these stories, right? The sounds of mice and everything else. And she always said to learn is to grow. And so I'm immediately taken to, okay, you're basically telling me, without reading anymore, that you want to be a doctor because your mom has instilled this passion of learning in you. Is that what you're trying to tell me without me reading any further?
Nope, that wouldn't be much of a good reason to enter this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So learning is growing. Goal in raising me was to instill the importance of education and to use that to make the world a better place. Okay, now we get it. I want to be a doctor because education is important and it makes the world a better place. Your decision here to pursue challenging but rewarding academic path. I'm like, okay, now I know why you want to be a doctor, right? Not necessarily the best reason to be a doctor. There's lots of things in this world where you need to learn and grow and continue to learn that make an impact on the world. Medicine is potentially one of those things. Then we have this interesting, right? Her inspiration is powerful, resonates with me. She's now a professor of petroleum engineering in a top program in the country. Don't really need to know that, but okay. So it's like learning is growing, make a difference in the world. And then there's a little like petroleum. Well, oil and gas isn't the best thing for the world, so there's a little dichotomy there. So that's kind of interesting. But you see, the interesting thing here is like, well, my mom does this thing, petroleum engineering. She's a professor. But apparently I want to be a doctor. I still don't know why yet, other than education is important. Okay? So we're 2 paragraphs in, and I'm still a little lost.
Gotcha.
So this is where our paths differ. There you go, right? Your mom's doing this. What the heck does that have to do with you being a physician? So you're kind of like one step behind me because I'm asking all these questions, and you're like, oh, wait, I'm going to tell you, right? So
yeah.
Your mom's dedicating her life to providing the world with energy. I dedicate my life to medicine. Why? Again, one step behind me. Next sentence. My first encounter with a physician would plant this idea in my head. I highly recommend students don't use seed and plant and grow and water. Like, don't use those analogies or metaphors in your writing. I know that's how I talk about it in my personal statement book. Don't use it in your writing because it's overused at this point.
Okay.
8 years old, brother broke arm during horseplay. Great, got it. Quickly rushed me to the doctor's office. And you have pain and itchiness wearing a cast. There was one thing that stood out to me. I really liked the doctor. Why? Okay. Again, one step behind where my brain is. And that's just your style of writing is you're a little too late to give me the information I want and need.
Okay.
And that's the difference between showing and telling. You're telling me instead of showing me. If you showed me, then you would lead with what that experience looked like, what it felt like, so that I could picture you in that situation without me needing to ask these questions. Well, why did you really like the doctor? I would be able to see that and feel it from you. Okay? So he was funny. He gave me popsicles at every visit. And best of all, he fixed my arm. Woohoo! I did not decide then and there I'd someday grow up to be him, which is normal. It's normal not to grow up at that moment and do that. It would later, when I asked the age-old question, what do you want to do with your life when I'm old and dying? What will I have done with my life to be happy in that moment? And then you get to me, the only answer is to be a physician. Why? You haven't led me anywhere to show me why you want to be a physician. Again, other than at the very beginning, that first paragraph where you're like, I embrace it with open arms. It's what I want to do with my life. I was asked this question. My only answer is to be a physician. I broke my arm once. Doctor was funny, gave me popsicles. You like 1-2 skipped a few there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm missing those connections, that understanding of who you are and what led you here. No career is guaranteed to make me feel as fulfilled and content with what I've done in my life than medicine. That's a very hyperbolic statement. If I can successfully take an 8-year-old's mind off the pain of his broken arm, and even better, be the person who fixes it, then I know I am where I want to be. So just a weird correlation of like, if I can be the doctor that helped me, then I know where I'm supposed to be.
Gotcha.
Again, lots of statements here without a lot of supporting documentation, right? Of what have you done to really understand that, other than say you broke your arm, you didn't realize it then, but when somebody asked you a question, oh, I want to be a doctor. We get back to the negative. However, as I made clear, just want to let you know, I know the life of a physician is very difficult. And lots of students, potentially, they don't do it out of the subconscious, right? Getting super psychology on you. Not necessarily from the subconscious, but more active of like, I need to prove to the person reading this that I understand that medicine is difficult. So they don't think I'm just some like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, naive person coming into this. That's not the goal of the personal statement. You're not the only person in the world who's like, haha, I'm going to trick them and let them know that I understand medicine's hard and everyone else applying just doesn't know how hard it is.
Right.
Right? Very common thing I see. So again, don't need it. I would need to prove to myself that medicine was truly a career I wanted. Yes, that's what I've been hoping for. Like, yes, I want to see this. Show me. So time and time again, I found proof while working with patients. Great, show me one of these patients. Again, one step behind because you're telling and not showing. One of these patients was blah, an elderly lady. So now you finally get into this little story of helping me understand who you are. Okay? So you have this story here. She took a moment, thankfully said no, but then the nurse's doctors arrived. Practice manager told me I should stay out of the way, blah, blah, blah. The opinion that mattered most to me was I'm assuming the patient there.
Yes.
She always brought up how I was able to help her. I would brush it off saying anyone would have done it, but truthfully her words gave me the best feeling ever. Making that feeling my career is why I'm pursuing medicine. That, to me, is a wrong statement to make. Why?
I know that, well, after reviewing more of your your stuff lately, focusing on feelings is not a good idea.
No, feelings is great. That's all I want you to focus on.
Oh, gotcha.
Feelings is wonderful. Here's where I think it could be flipped. Is you're focusing on you. Basically, your reflection is, I want to go into medicine so that I can feel good.
Okay.
That's what that statement says. Right? Making that feeling, her words made me feel good. Making that feeling, my career is why I'm pursuing medicine. I am pursuing medicine so other people can make me feel good.
Yep, that doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good, right? I understand what you're trying to say, but it doesn't sound good how it's written.
Yeah.
Okay? So just massaging those things, always trying to point that light back at the patient, how you're going to impact the patient is, in my mind, a better reflection. Yes, it feels amazing to do something for a patient. It does. But when you write about it in this way, it looks very narcissistic.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, got that. All right. The other reason why I want to spend my life as a physician is because I want to spend my life learning about all the nuances. So now we're back to mommy said education is important, and I just want to remind you that learning is important, and I know that there's a lot of learning and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So we got the learning part down. You have here, I find it completely fascinating. The body is akin to an extremely delicate machine. So again, just trying to get a little too fancy and making these comparisons, human body, fascinating, blah, 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 right? We get it. Human body is amazing. We love it. We want to go into medicine to learn about it. It's overplayed. It's cliche. Stay away from it. Okay? I was able to explore the details of medicine in the SMP. So now you're talking about your education, which we know about already because it's in your transcript. Not only do I owe my success in the program to my drive to become a physician, but also because of my genuine interest in what I was learning. So again, like, I'm interested, I'm good, you don't have to worry about me. I would have potentially been a lot more straightforward in this area. I know you want to call out kind of this SMP GPA to show like, hey, I'm good. Please ignore my undergraduate GPA. I would have been a lot more direct. Like, I understand my undergraduate GPA may be a concern. I attribute that to lack of maturity and blah, 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 blah. But once I focused and did my SMP, I hope you'll see that this is something I'm dedicated to, or whatever you want to say there, right? Just be a lot more direct and not try to work around this. And then what typically happens when you're more direct is it's much shorter and you got room for everything else. And then you kind of tie it back into your mom again here with the Cultural Revolution, be part of someone who has, and more so to have their values, education, just one more time, I want to let you know, education is important to me.
Big fan of learning.
Learning. To have their values and ethics instilled in me fuels my desire, blah, 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 blah. And so it's interesting how your conclusion is mostly about your mom and her drive and ethics. And yes, it's instilled in you, but it's a little bit too much about her to finish off.
Okay.
So I get to the end of this, and my favorite thing at the end is, okay, do I know why you want to be a physician? And I kind of do. I understand you broke your arm when you were young, and the doctor impacted you in some way that I didn't really get to understand. And then at some point, you proclaimed and declared that you're going to be a doctor. I don't really know how you got to that point. And then I saw this interaction, this great interaction with a patient that left me with, oh, he just wants to feel good every day. He wants patients to make him feel good. And so, yeah, I'm left scratching my head. Not a lot of clinical experience recently. And a personal statement that misses the goal of why do you want to be a doctor? And potentially that's because you don't have a lot of recent clinical experience. And so you're kind of grasping at straws of like, well, what do I write about? And so I'm not sold that this is what you want to do, that you know why you want to do it, that you understand what you're doing, other than it makes you feel good, apparently. So let's take a look at your school list. And your school list is huge, lots of schools. And I can understand, right? You apply to 3 application cycles. You're like, this is going to be the year. But sometimes it goes a little overboard. How many schools are on here? 30?
Something like that.
Yeah.
33?
I didn't count. So lots of schools, and for the most part, looks okay in terms of public, private, etc. So not a terrible job in terms of school list. So what questions do you have based on everything we just talked about?
So you would say that the things that I need to focus on is absolutely to be involved with some type of clinical experience at this point before I would proceed with another app cycle.
I would 1000% dedicate your time to clinical experiences and shadowing and reproving to yourself that this is what you want, to make it easier for medical schools to believe you after reading a personal statement and everything else. Okay.
Because currently I'm doing non-clinical volunteering. So it seems like I need to substitute that for clinical.
I would recommend that. Yeah. Need is not a word I would say, but I would highly recommend it. Because to me, that's one of the biggest red flags. It's just a lack of recent experience.
Gotcha. So when it comes to the work and activities, how bad is it to not rewrite everything? Because there's only a certain amount of anecdotes that you would have. So
yep. It's not terrible not to rewrite it. You can tweak and rearrange and massage, but you can use the same stories, same anecdotes, etc. And as we were going through, like, you'll watch the replay and you'll see, like, I didn't mark up your activity descriptions much at all. So, and that's a good thing for application renovation.
Yeah. Well, I definitely took a page out of your book when it came to those. So
good.
Yeah. So, and you were talking about in the personal statement being direct with grades.
Yep.
And I was always told to avoid any type of negativity, and that would include grades by previous advisors and stuff. And so they would say, like, don't ever talk about your undergrad performance or whatever, or and how you've overcome that and stuff. Like, just keep that out. But I feel like this journey that I've been on to remediate that is definitely very important to where I am today, and it's given me like a level of resiliency that otherwise would not be there. So I've already, for the record, I've rewritten my personal statement.
Nice.
I've got a couple of drafts because I definitely saw that some issues with it, but I've got a big chunk on that. So I don't know whether to include that or to not, to use my space on that.
Yeah.
But
At the end of the day, it's up to you, right? I give lots of advice on what to include, what not to include. Red flags is one of the things potentially that I talk about to include, and that undergraduate GPA is a potential red flag. At the end of the day, it's what are you comfortable writing about? That's all that matters. It's your personal statement.
Okay.
You can tell me to F off and leave me alone, and great. It's your personal statement. You do what you want. My job here is to just give you opinions and different perspectives on how things could be viewed. And so talking about your undergraduate performance, I don't think is negative unless you frame it in a negative way. Right? Okay. Oh, like I did poorly. My professors were horrible. They didn't give me enough time to do this. They did, like, you could do very poorly writing about it. But if you just talk about it, like I came in very immature, first time away from home, whatever else, like just very straightforward, very to the point, very honest. Tell your truth. It's easy. And that's not necessarily negative. Yeah, it is a negative thing because you have a poor GPA, but how you write about it doesn't have to be negative.
Makes sense. And then I got one final question. It's a little quick one, but I don't know if you noticed, but on my letter writers, I had one individual who I had assigned to schools, and then they ended up being unable to write me a letter. And so, of course, the general wisdom is to make sure that you're getting that letter before you start assigning. Yeah. But I didn't do that. So I was wondering if that reflects negatively or poorly from admissions committees when they review that and see that, oh, well, I don't know what happened here, but he's not getting a letter from this person now.
So the question would be, did you assign that letter writer to any schools?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go into AMCAS and say, never mind, I'm not getting this letter?
Yes.
Okay. So then it's not a problem.
Okay. So it doesn't mean anything. They wouldn't
just means
make assumptions.
I mean, they can make any assumptions they want, but there are a million reasons why someone isn't going to write a letter, right? Guess what?
Gotcha.
People are busy, people move, people die, people whatever, right? So I wouldn't worry about assigning and then unassigning letters. As long as you unassign them, which is something that you can change post-submission of your application so that medical schools aren't waiting for that letter of rec, thinking it's coming, and they're waiting on it to mark your file complete. And so did you not get any interviews this cycle because every school is waiting on a letter that's not coming?
Right, yeah.
So as long as you unassigned it, that's fine. I did want to take one extra look, just calling out secondary stuff more in these videos, is the biggest mistake that I see with secondary essays is answering the question. And so we have this cultural humility is defined as a process of reflection, blah, 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 right? It says, please provide an example of a specific time you demonstrated cultural humility with some reflection on the experience. And I highlighted the start of two sentences here. The first sentence, an incident early in my life. Okay, so that's a specific time. And then a couple sentences down, a recent example occurred, blah, 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 blah. It says, please provide an example of a specific time. You have two examples.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the
Not following
stupidest
simple
thing.
instructions.
It's the stupidest thing, but I'll call it out. Answer the question. Give me one example. Okay?
Gotcha.
There are ways of filtering out people who don't follow directions. And this could be one of their ways. Very easy. Let me look at the secondaries. Did they follow the directions? If they didn't, I'm not even going to look at their application. In the residency application process, residency applications have gotten atrocious. Students are applying to every single residency program in the country for their specialty. And so residency program directors are completely overwhelmed with applications. And it's like 300 applications per seat versus medical school, it's like 50 applications per seat. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And so I heard a story recently of a program director on their website, had their website of their residency program, and at the very bottom of the page had a link that said, like, if you're really interested in our program, like, click here to submit the secondary application, which isn't a normal process for residencies. And if a student didn't do that, applying to residency, didn't click on that, they wouldn't look. They wouldn't
want you to read the fine print, or it cost you there.
Read the fine print. When I'm hiring people, I'll throw in random things. Like, there's one website that I use to hire freelancers and other stuff. I'll put in a random thing in the middle of a description, in the middle of a paragraph, that says, please include last year's Super Bowl winner in your answer.
Just a real easy way to weed out who's real easy way reading.
And 95% of the like proposals that I get don't include it, and it's just a templated, you should hire me because I'm amazing. I'm like, you didn't read anything.
Wow.
So read the question, answer the question for secondaries.
Will do.
Thank you for coming on. Season 4, Episode 2 of Application Renovation. Fingers crossed, you continue to get some more experiences. You continue to understand that this is what you want to do. You just tell a little bit of a better story in your application, and with those renewed experiences, hopefully this is something coming your way.
Definitely. Thanks for having me and for everything you do for the pre-med community.